On October 24th, 1998, 28-year-old Kristine Kupka mysteriously disappeared. She was last in the company of her ex-boyfriend whom she dated for only 5 months, her former science professor Rudy Persad, who is the main suspect in her disappearance and possible murder, though the case remains unsolved to this day. Born in rural Mount Carroll, Illinois in 1970, Kristine Kupka had a difficult childhood, enduring the divorce of her parents and the death of her father. Following her father's death, Kristine's mother moved the family, consisting of her, Kristine, and Kristine's 6 siblings, to Madison, Wisconsin. After graduating high school, Kristine enrolled at the University of Wisconsin. As she grew older, she found the Midwest wasn't the right fit for her, so she dropped out of school and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, where she worked as a waitress for a stint. After visiting her sister Kathy in New York City, however, she realized that this was where she was meant to be, and she vowed to move there. Once in New York, Kristine settled into the Kensington section of Brooklyn, renting a house there with several roommates. She picked up a new job waitressing at a Caribbean restaurant and also decided to re-enroll in college. She attended Baruch College, located in Manhattan. She excelled as a student and hoped to continue on to law school and specialize in women's issues. The spring semester of 1998 was Kristine's final semester at Baruch. One of the final classes she needed before graduation was a chemistry class taught by a young adjunct professor named Darshanand Persad, who preferred to go by Rudy. Kristine developed a crush on Rudy and wasn't shy about pursuing him, though she was uncertain if he was single. Eventually, Rudy confided in her that he was, having recently gone through a breakup. The two exchanged phone and beeper numbers, but in complying with university rules did not begin to date until the spring semester ended and Rudy was no longer Kristine's professor. Not long into Rudy and Kristine's relationship, in June 1998, Kristine discovered she was pregnant. Though the pregnancy was unplanned, Kristine's shock eventually gave way to excitement, and she felt she was up to the challenge of becoming a mother. Kristine was certain the child was Rudy's, as she hadn't been with anyone else in the time leading up to her pregnancy. Though Kristine was nervous to tell Rudy about the pregnancy, given how unexpected it was, she did not expect him to react in the way he did when she finally broke the news to him. Rudy was absolutely furious. He adamantly denied the child was his, claiming he had gotten a partial vasectomy. Kristine explained that he was the only possible father, and at this Rudy broke down in tears, begging Kristine not to go through with the pregnancy. Though Kristine was very liberal in her beliefs, and firmly pro-choice, she would not consider abortion, for she wanted to be a mother. Rudy then explained that he was in fact married, and a business trip to Turkey he mentioned to Kristine during the spring semester was actually his honeymoon. Rudy told Kristine that his family, all from Guyana, were extremely conservative and active in the Hindu faith, with his father being a Hindu priest. He said they would disown him if they knew he conceived a child out of wedlock. He and his wife lived with his parents, so they'd be out of a home if his parents found out about the pregnancy. And on top of that, his parents would stop funding his education at the New Jersey dental school. He persisted that Kristine end her pregnancy, but she refused, vowing to have the baby regardless of whether Rudy wanted to be in his child's life. Soon Kristine became anxious that Rudy would take matters into his own hands and try to use violence to cause her to miscarry. She confided in her friends who knew about her pregnancy that she felt unsafe. She even said, "If anything happens to me, he will have probably done it." Kristine was perfectly willing to cut Rudy out of her life, but she was determined to get his name on her child's birth certificate, so the child would at least know who their father was. This would also allow Kristine to sue for child support, if ever necessary. At this point, Rudy was avoiding Kristine. Kristine kept trying to call him to try and get him to agree to be on her child's birth certificate. One day, someone answered the phone, but it wasn't Rudy. It was his wife, Rochelle, demanding to know who it was who kept trying to contact her husband. Kristine at first said she was merely one of Rudy's students, but eventually disclosed that she had had a brief relationship with Rudy. Kristine said that Rochelle would need to ask Rudy why she kept trying to reach him, but Rochelle saw what was happening, correctly guessing that Kristine was pregnant. Rochelle became furious at her husband, even saying that Kristine could have him, but Kristine said she didn't want him either. The two women actually came to feel empathy for one another, bonding over the fact that the same man had upended their lives. Kristine said she didn't want to interfere in Rochelle's marriage. All she wanted, she told Rochelle, was Rudy's name on the birth certificate, and then she'd vanish from his life to raise her baby. In October of 1998, Kristine was 5 months pregnant and preparing to have her baby. She was almost finished with school with only 2 months until graduation, which would set her up for a career. Then, out of nowhere, after months of silence, Rudy reappeared. He called Kristine, telling her Rochelle had kicked him out of the house and that he was staying with a cousin. This time, he suddenly was supportive of Kristine's pregnancy, claiming he now wanted to be in the child's life and even offering to be Kristine's birthing coach. Kristine was wary of this, but cautiously optimistic that Rudy had had a change of heart. Nonetheless, she made it clear that she did not want to get back together with Rudy and encouraged him to reconcile with his wife. On October 23rd, Rudy called Kristine, requesting her help in cleaning an apartment he'd recently procured in Queens. Kristine agreed. The next day, he came to collect her at her house, but she'd overslept. One of Kristine's roommates let Rudy in and reported he seemed anxious waiting for Kristine to get ready. Before leaving the house, Kristine phoned her sister Kathy, but she didn't pick up. Kristine left her a voicemail telling her that she was going to see Rudy's new apartment and that she'd call her back. She left with Rudy in his car, and she hasn't been seen since. When Kristine failed to call her back, Kathy became worried, as it wasn't like Kristine to forget to do so. Kristine's roommate called Kathy, also worried about Kristine, who hadn't come back home the night of October 24th. Kathy and her husband Kevin tried to report Kristine missing to the local police department, but they said they'd have to wait for some time before filing a missing persons report. Kathy and Kevin decided to take matters into their own hands, frustrated the police weren't taking Kristine's disappearance all that seriously. They tracked down Rudy's cousin and mother in Brooklyn and demanded to speak to Rudy, who was nowhere to be found. An hour later, Rudy showed up, accompanied by police backup. His relatives had told him that Kristine's family was looking for him. Kathy and Kevin didn't have much time to question Rudy before he retreated into his house. They demanded to know the last time he saw Kristine and if he knew where she was now. Rudy's story is rather suspicious. He told Kathy and Kevin that he and Kristine did not go to any Queens apartment, but to a shopping mall. He wasn't able to say which shopping mall, claiming he stayed in the car while Kristine shopped and didn't pay attention. He said after shopping he took Kristine back to Brooklyn and dropped her off a few blocks from her house because she wanted to go to a health food store. He claimed this was the last time he saw her, and that was his last word on the matter. 7 days after Kristine's disappearance, the police finally began investigating her case in earnest, declaring her a missing person. Word of her disappearance spread, and 2 people claimed that they saw her on the day she disappeared, later in the day after Rudy had dropped her off in Brooklyn. An employee at the health food store Kristine supposedly visited claimed to have seen her at the store. The owner of a laundromat also reported he saw Kristine walk by his building. Unfortunately, both these sightings were retracted because the witnesses admitted they were mistaken. The laundromat owner actually saw Kristine on another day, and the health food store owner saw only someone who resembled Kristine. The employee at the health food store said the woman he saw was wearing peach-colored pants, which definitely didn't fit a description of Kristine, who was well known for wearing only black. On November 10th, with still no progress in finding Kristine, Kristine's friends and family held a candlelight vigil outside Baruch College, which awarded Kristine an honorary degree, for she disappeared before she had the chance to complete her studies and move on to law school. Because law school was Kristine's dream, which she was adamant in pursuing, her friends and family ruled out her abandoning it to run away, and also ruled out suicide, insisting she was happy, in spite of the hardships she faced upon meeting Rudy, and wanted to be a mother. Police turned their attention to Rudy as the prime suspect in Kristine's disappearance, questioning him on November 2nd with his lawyer present. Rudy was cooperative, but didn't have a solid alibi. Rudy certainly had a motive for hurting Kristine, but investigators had to concede they had no solid evidence to implicate him in her disappearance. Being the last person seen with someone isn't a crime, after all. In the end, Rudy was never charged and maintains his innocence to this day. He's currently working as a dentist in Florida. Now, there are other possibilities besides Rudy being the culprit. New York isn't the safest of cities, and it's not implausible that Kristine ran into some stranger who meant her harm. There are certainly some sick, cruel people in this world who'd be quick to attack a pregnant woman, thinking her to be an easy target. Police swept the city by foot and by helicopter for any clues as to what happened to Kristine, but nothing was ever found. Kristine's family even enlisted the help of Gil Alba, an ex-NYPD detective with experience in solving kidnappings by Colombian and Dominican drug dealers, but even his expertise wasn't enough to find Kristine. On October 24, 2000, exactly 2 years after Kristine's disappearance, Kathy had managed to raise enough funds to have a missing persons billboard put up, announcing a $25,000 reward for information that may help in the search for Kristine. Kristine's story unfortunately faded from the media by 2001. Many YouTubers have been covering the case lately, hopefully giving it some new life, so we may arrive at some answers as to what became of Kristine and her unborn child. 23 years later, their fate still remains unknown. If you have any information that may help in this case, please contact the relevant authorities, or see Kristine's family's website, which I linked to in the description. Thanks everyone for watching, and a special thanks to Justice4 for emailing me this case. If you have any cold cases you want me to cover, or any other horror stories, true or fictional, you'd like to see on the channel, please remember you can email me at assortedhorrors@protonmail.com. Alright guys, thank you once again. Remember to stay safe out there, stay spooky, and remember to not get scared out of sorts.